Hello everybody, and welcome to part 10 of The Firework Maker's Daughter by Philip Pullman. At the end of part 9, Hamlet the elephant was pleading with the king for the lives of Lila and her father and Chulak. Let's see what happens. These are special and particular circumstances. Oh, that rice, oh, that plum sauce, oh, the smell of those spices. And even Lila's fear couldn't prevent her mouth from watering because she was so hungry. And then they waited. Minutes went by, and more minutes, and poor Lila was so stiff and tired she nearly fell asleep standing up, as worried as she was. But finally there was a stir of movement by the door. "Prisoners," barked the general, "fall in, follow me." 2 lines of guardsmen, all stamping proudly with Chulak and Lila between them, followed the general back to the courtyard. When they'd bowed properly, the king said, "Firstly, as for you, Chulak, I am suspending my judgment. I have it on good authority that you've never sought to harm the elephant, but I'm not convinced that you're the best person to look after him, so you are dismissed." Chulak swallowed hard and looked at Hamlet. Then the king turned to Lila and said, "I have considered your case very carefully. It's highly unusual and this is my decision. I shall spare the life of Lalchand, the firework maker, but only on one condition. Next week, as the whole city knows, we celebrate the festival of the new year, and I have invited the greatest artists in fireworks from all over the world to contribute to a display. Now, here's my plan. I shall announce a competition for the final night of the festival. A firework display will be put on by each of my invited artists, and Lalchand and Lila will take part as well. The prize of a golden cup will be awarded to the artist whose display receives the longest applause. That is all that the other competitors will know, but you and Lalchand will know something else as well. If your display wins, then Lalchand will receive the prize and go free. But if you lose the competition, he loses his life too. That is my decision, and there will be no appeal. You have a week to save your father's life, Lila. Guards, see them out and release Lalchand the firework maker into the care of his daughter." And Lila barely had time to think before she found herself at a little side door of the palace where a servant held up a flickering torch for her to wait by. But she didn't have to wait long, because from behind a door came the sound of a chain falling to the ground, and then the door opened, and there was Lalchand. Neither of them could speak, but they hugged each other so tightly that they could barely breathe. And when they'd had enough, they realised how hungry they were and hurried home. "We'll get some fried prawns from the stall in the alley and eat them as we work," said Lalchand. "Have they told you what the king's decided?" Lila asked. "Yes, but I'm not worried. We'll have to work as we have never worked before, but we can do it." And Lila forgot all about the royal sulphur and the 3 gifts. There was no time to wonder about them now. She hurried into the workshop with some dishes of rice and prawns and fried vegetables, and they scooped them up absent-mindedly as they worked. "Father," said Lila, "I've got an idea. Supposing," and she took a stick of charcoal from the bench and drew some quick sketches. Lalchand's eyes lit up. "But begin slowly, build up to it." "And on the way back from Mount Merapi," she said, "when we stopped by the river, I saw how some vines had twisted around each other, and I thought of a way of delaying the fuses, making them burn at different rates." "Impossible." "No, it isn't. Look, I'll show you." And so they set to work. The invited firework makers arrived the very next day, together with all the other famous artists and performers. The Chinese Scout and Guide Opera Company, Senor Archibaldo Gomez and his Filipino Mambo Orchestra, the Norwegian National Comedy Cowbell Players, and many others. They all disembarked from the SS Indescribable with their luggage and their instruments and their costumes, and they began to rehearse at once. The first firework maker was Dr. Puffenflash from Heidelberg. He had invented a multi-stage rocket which exploded at a height of 2,000 feet into the shape of a gigantic Frankfurter sausage, while a huge instrument that he'd invented played the Ride of the Valkyries. Herr Puffenflash had gone to immense trouble to prepare something just as spectacular for the New Year festival, and he supervised the unloading of his enormous equipment with scrupulous care. The second visiting firework maker was Signor Scorcini from Naples. His family had been making fireworks for generations, and his speciality was noise. For this display, he'd invented a full-scale representation of a battle at sea, featuring the noisiest fireworks in the world, and with King Neptune emerging from the water to see fair play and declare peace. The third and last firework maker was Colonel Sam Sparkington from Chicago. His display was called the Greatest Fireworks Show in the Galaxy, and it usually featured Colonel Sparkington himself wearing a white Stetson hat and riding a horse. This time it was rumoured that he'd invented an especially exciting display involving something never before seen in the art of pyrotechnics. And while the three visiting firework makers were assembling their displays, Lalchand and Lila were working on theirs. Time flew past. They barely slept, they scarcely washed, they hardly ate. They mixed vats of golden serpents, they ordered 1.5 tons of flowers of salt, they invented something so new that neither could think of a name for it until Lila said, foaming, and snapped her fingers. Moss, said Lalchand. Yeah, that's it. Lila showed Lalchand her delayed fuse method, but it didn't work until he thought of adding some spirits of saltpetre, and then it worked magnificently. It would let them set off 50 or 100 fireworks at once. Which had previously been impossible. Then Lalchand came up with a spectacular finale, but it depended on something even more impossible, burning a fuse underwater. Lila solved that by thinking of caustic naphtha, and they tried it and it worked. And before they knew it, the day of the festival arrived. I wonder where Chulak is, Lila said vaguely, but her mind was really on the foaming moss. I hope Hamlet's being treated well, said Lalchand, but he was really thinking about the caustic naphtha. And neither of them said anything about the king's decision, but they couldn't get it out of their minds. After a hasty sleep and a hurried breakfast, they loaded up the fried prawn seller's cart, because he'd lent it to them because he was taking the day off, and trundled it through the streets to the Royal Park, where the displays were going to take place. The batik seller followed behind with another cart, and behind him came the sandalwood carver from down the street, the third, all laden with fireworks. But when they reached the ornamental lake, Lila and Lalchand stopped in dismay, for there was Dr. Puffenflash supervising the final stages of putting together about 15 tons of equipment, all swathed in a neat tarpaulin and swarmed over by a dozen pyrotechnicians in white overalls with clipboards and stethoscopes, and next to him there was Signor Scorcini clambering about on a model galleon even longer than the royal barge, all bristling with cannons and flares, while his Neapolitan crew were arguing and gesticulating in a Neapolitan dialect as they lowered a vast nodding bearded model of King Neptune below the water. And next to him, Colonel Sparkington was rehearsing his display. There was a gigantic red, white and blue rocket with a saddle on the back of it, and on a scaffolding platform high above the treetops there was a model of the moon with dozens of craters all being loaded with exciting looking things. It was too much. Lal Chand and Lila looked at the vast displays being prepared by the other artists, and then at their 3 little cartloads, and their hearts sank. "Never mind," said Lal Chand. "Ours is a good display, my love. Think of the foaming moth. They've got nothing like that." "Or the underwater view," said Lila. "Look, they're having to light that sea god by hand. We can do better than that, Father." "Of course we can. Let's get to work." And that is where we will stop today. At the end of part 9 of the story, I asked you if you thought that animals had language. The answer to that is yes, they definitely do. All animals communicate with one another. They all have their own way of speaking. It's just that we don't always understand their language, and they don't always understand ours. One animal that definitely understands our language is the dog. Do you know that a dog can understand as many words as a 3-year-old human child? That is a lot of words. So please remember that with your own pets. The more you speak with them, the more they will understand you, and the more you will understand them, and the happier you both will be. I'll be back with part 11 in a couple of days. Bye-bye.